Now, in your case, Duke, I realize this isn't fair to ask you to narrow it down to a single moment, but an all-star memory for you?
Well, it would have to be 1966 for me, Bob. The St. Louis Cardinals invited me back for the All-Star game that year. I worked the concession stands on a very hot day and really didn't catch a break there either. They gave me hot chocolate. I mean, I couldn't believe it, 106 degrees.
A typical bad break, a setback for you.
What a day.
Bob Uecker's so good. 1994, there's Bob Costas, of course, with the late Joe Morgan, one of the greatest players in history. So you had the Bob Uecker celebration 2 days ago, right, in Milwaukee?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, they honored him on opening day just by mentioning him, and everyone rose for a sustained standing ovation. There'll be another formal ballpark celebration in August. But then they did a private thing for about 1,000 people in a theater night before last that I was part of in Milwaukee. And it was just the perfect combination of humor and heart. It was poignant, but it was also uproariously funny because that's the way people feel about Uke. And everybody told their stories. Al Michaels told one of the best ones. He was working with Uke and Howard Cosell on ABC. And Cosell asserted some strategic suggestion, and Uke gently disagreed. And Cosell persisted, and Uke disagreed again. And then Howard goes, Uke, you're awfully truculent tonight. You do know what truculent means, don't you? And Uecker says, up the top of his head, of course I do, Howard. If you had a truck and I borrowed it, then that would be a truculent. Right. He had his great stories that he would tell with Johnny Carson and whatnot, but he was also so quick.
Wow.
I was telling you earlier, I did a game in the 90s in the postseason against the Rangers. And this is part of it. Let's talk about this for a second. He was actually part of the team. He had his own locker in the clubhouse. And every year when they made the playoffs, they voted him a full share. And then he would donate the full share to charity. And you see him in the middle of those celebrations, pumping his arm in the champagne. There was just nobody quite like him. And a lot of people who only know him from his national stuff, which is great enough, don't realize how great a pure play-by-play man he was on the radio. Even if he never said something funny.
Which is the real craft.
Absolutely. He was
nuts and bolts. Terrific. Calling the game, and he was terrific.
Yep. Absolutely. So I'm doing this game with him and Joe Morgan, and it's the Rangers and the Yankees in the division series. Tight game, late innings, and the director starts taking only tight shots of the principals. So I pick up on what he's doing, and I just say their last name. So it's Pettit, Palmeiro, Gonzalez, Jeter, Torrey, Oates. And then when that riff is over with, the next shot is a shot of a perfect full moon over the Bronx. And only then does Uecker speak, and he says, Don Zimmer? Do we have a shot of Don Zimmer to back up what Uecker did? But that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
The timing was there, such a classic. Right, people who know, but like, he had his own sitcom. Network sitcom.
Yes. And some of his co-stars from Mr. Belvedere came to the event the other night, and some 40 former and present Brewers players were there as well.
Tomorrow in New Haven, a service for the late commissioner of baseball, Fay Vincent.
Yes.
What is Fay Vincent's legacy in baseball?
You know, I think he got short shrift a little bit upon his passing. Other things were going on in baseball. Bart Giamatti died barely a week after the decision about Pete Rose. Vincent was his deputy. He became the commissioner. Almost immediately after that, you get the Earthquake World Series. And the way he presided over that, calmly and competently, is part of his legacy. He also saw himself as a mediator. The owners were ready to go to war with the players, and Vincent didn't want to play that role. He wanted to mediate the dispute. And eventually there was a vote of no confidence, and he was forced out. And his memoir was entitled The Last Commissioner, a Baseball Valentine. But the key is that he really did love the game. This was a very accomplished man, was once the chairman of Columbia Pictures. He had been a football player at Williams College in Massachusetts until he fell from the 4th floor of his dormitory in a prank. They locked him out of his room, and he tried to inch along the ledge to get into the next thing, and he fell and broke his back. He was paralyzed for a long time from the chest down. And as he put it, I could no longer run, but I could think. And my life became the life of the mind. He was a brilliant and well-read man. So whatever the disputes were that forced him out as commissioner, that's one thing. But his love of the game could never be shortchanged. He was a contributor to the Wall Street Journal, and almost every column he wrote was in some way about baseball. And he devoted himself in his last years to doing archival interviews with players who might have been overlooked, Negro leaguers or old-timers, just to have something, which I think he gave to the Hall of Fame, to preserve the history of the game. The other stuff is just footnotes. His love of the game was just so obvious. He couldn't get around. He needed a cane to get around. And when he was at the ballpark, he had like a golf cart would take him around. But his sheer joy in being at the batting cage or in the dugout and talking to players, that's what endeared me to him.
It's important to look back. Again, he was always a very thoughtful interview, post-commissioner and everything like that. And I'm glad, I'm glad you're here to talk about him and to get that out.